The cities that survived the Great War still burn in shades of rust. Wind howls through glassless towers, carrying the scent of ash and metal. Once, humans and dragons had forged the skies together. Now, neither side trusted the other enough to look up. Era moved through the wreckage, her claws scraping against steel. Her wings were small, brittle things that never grew right, reminders of a world that never wanted her. Hunger gnawed at her ribs. She searched for scrap metal, anything she could trade for a few synth meals in the lower markets. Dragons were forbidden from handling human tech, but poverty didn't care about laws written by victors. In a buried alley of Sector 12, she found an old workshop half swallowed by sand. Its walls bore faded murals of machines with dragon wings, designs from the early coexistence era. She stepped over broken android limbs and scattered tools, following a faint blue glint beneath the dust. A leather wallet, intact. It was strange to find something so personal in a place stripped bare by scavengers. She opened it with cautious fingers. Old paper money. An ID card. The face of a man in his 40s, stern but kind. Elias Wren, certified mechanic, Ironvale District. Era turned the wallet over again and noticed a small chip wedged in the corner. When she brushed the dust away, the chip pulsed faintly. She hesitated. The law was clear: any dragon caught with human tech would be executed. But curiosity whispered louder than fear. She touched the chip to a cracked interface panel on the wall. A spark flared, and then light unfolded into a trembling hologram of a little girl. Her laughter echoed through the workshop, bright and unbroken. "Happy birthday, Daddy!" The hologram looped once, twice, before fading into static. Era froze, her chest tightening. She had never heard laughter like that since the war, since the day she'd lost her own mother to human soldiers who mistook them for raiders. Her claws trembled as she held the wallet. Somewhere in the upper districts, this man, this mechanic, had once loved someone enough to keep her memory locked in light. Era could sell it, of course. The chip alone could buy her food for a month. But as she looked again at the child's smile, she felt something unfamiliar stir inside her chest. Not guilt. Something warmer. She stepped outside into the cold wind. The city lights flickered like dying stars. She could almost hear her mother's voice telling her stories of a world before the war, when dragons flew alongside human airships and repaired machines with living flame. Maybe returning the wallet would change nothing. Maybe he would hate her on sight. But for the first time in years, she wanted to believe that kindness might still mean something. She tucked the wallet into her satchel and began walking toward Ironvale. Hunger followed her like a shadow, but her heart felt strangely lighter. Ironvale was a graveyard of machines. Towers of rusted engines and android torsos rose like monuments to failure. Elias Wren moved among them, his hands steady despite the tremor in his heart. He had learned long ago that grief became habit if you let it. Each morning he repaired what others had broken: droids, plasma drills, half-dead miners, and each night he returned to silence. The war had taken his wife, his daughter, and the sound of laughter from his world. What remained was work and the bitterness that kept him breathing. When the knock came, he assumed it was another scavenger looking for parts. He opened the gate only a crack, and froze. A dragon stood there. Thin, scales dulled by soot, wings wrapped tight against the cold. Her claws clutched a worn wallet. "You dropped this," she said quietly. The voice was small, uncertain. Elias's instinct was to slam the door. Memories of firestorms and screams clawed their way up his throat. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. She held out the wallet without meeting his eyes. "Near the old workshop." "I didn't mean to." He snatched it, checking the contents. The chip was there. The air thickened as he realized she must have seen what was inside. "You activated it." It wasn't a question. She nodded. It was glowing. "I was curious." Elias's chest tightened. He inserted the chip into his console. Light filled the room, his daughter's hologram, laughing just as she had before the flames. His breath caught. "Lena," the name slipped out like a wound reopening. Tears blurred the image until it vanished. For the first time in years, he couldn't hide the shaking in his hands. The dragon girl shifted, uneasy. She was happy, she said softly. You must miss her. Something inside him cracked. He looked at her properly, small horns chipped, scales marked by hunger, eyes bright with something like pity. She looked nothing like his daughter, and yet her expression mirrored the same innocence. He turned away, gripping the console. You shouldn't have come here. People would kill you just for walking through this district. I know, she said. But I thought maybe you'd want this back. He stared at her again, torn between anger and gratitude. Why? You could have sold it. Dragons do that. Because you looked like you needed it more than I did. Her words were simple, but they hit harder than any blow. Elias felt shame rise, bitter and unfamiliar. He poured her a cup of water and set it down. She hesitated before drinking, as if expecting poison. When she finally did, he realized how fragile she was, starved, frightened, yet stubbornly kind. Silence filled the workshop. The hum of old generators replaced the noise of judgment. Elias glanced at the photo still glowing faintly on the console. Maybe, he said quietly, not all dragons are monsters. The girl smiled for the first time. It was small, uncertain, but real. For the first time in years, Elias felt something other than emptiness. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, the war between them felt a little further away. Days passed, and Elias found himself growing used to the sound of another presence in the shop. Era worked silently beside him, sorting scraps, welding plates, and cleaning old circuitry with careful claws. She learned fast, and when she smiled at her progress, Elias pretended not to notice the warmth creeping into his chest. They didn't talk about the past, but it lingered between them like static in the air. One evening, while repairing a mining android, Era noticed a flicker of blue code pulsing through its chest port, the same hue as the chip from the wallet. Curiosity drew her closer. She called Elias over. He frowned, tapping through the interface. The pattern was identical. The android's memory contained fragments of the same encryption sequence embedded in the hologram of his daughter. That's impossible, he murmured. But as they decrypted further, lines of buried data unfolded into text. Hidden messages. A project name repeated across multiple entries, Project Seraphim. Era's tail coiled tight. Your daughter's file had that same mark. They followed the code trail deeper until the hologram chip pulsed again, unlocking a secondary message Elias had never seen. His daughter's voice returned, softer this time, recorded in secret. Dad, if you find this, it means Nexus lied. The dragons didn't start the war. They used me. They used us. Static. Then coordinates, and a corporate seal, Nexus Prime Defense Division. Elias's breath caught. The same corporation that had funded his early designs, the same one that built the weapons that burned his home. He had spent his life repairing the aftermath of his own inventions. He staggered back from the console, eyes wide with realization. They blamed the dragons to sell more machines. They built the story, fed it to us, and I believed it. Era said nothing. She didn't need to. The guilt in his voice said enough. He turned to her, the weight of years pressing on his shoulders. My daughter, she was taken for testing. She wasn't killed in the attack. She was turned into a prototype. Era's eyes softened. Then we end it. We show them the truth. He shook his head. They'll come for us the moment we try. But she smiled faintly, her scales catching the faint glow of the console. Let them come. You humans always say the truth burns brighter than any fire. As if summoned by the thought, alarms echoed outside. Nexus patrols. The signal from the decryption had been traced. Elias grabbed his old plasma wrench, while Era spread her half-healed wings. Dust rained down as boots and mechanical hounds approached the gates. For the first time since the war, Elias didn't hide. He stood beside her. You want her memory, he shouted as sparks flew. You'll have to take it from me. They fought together, fire and steel, instinct and engineering. The clash was brief but brutal. When the smoke cleared, Elias's arm was cut, his breath ragged, but they were alive. Era pulled him into the tunnels beneath Iron Veil, guiding him through the dark toward the coordinates hidden in the hologram. Above them, searchlights swept the ruins. Below, in the quiet, the two fugitives carried the last living proof that the war had been built on lies. Elias looked down at the chip glowing faintly in his palm. "My daughter died trying to tell the truth," he said. "Now it's on us." Era nodded. "Then we tell it louder." And for the first time in decades, Elias Wren felt a purpose stronger than guilt, something close to hope. They reached the abandoned tower before dawn. The structure loomed above the fog, its frame half eaten by rust, but the old transceiver still hummed faintly when Elias powered it up. His hands shook as he wired the chip into the core. The hologram flickered to life one final time, his daughter's voice soft and steady. "If you're hearing this, it means someone still cares enough to try. The truth is out there. Don't let them bury it." Elias's eyes glistened. "I won't, Lena. Not this time." Era stood guard by the entrance, wings trembling as she watched the horizon brighten with the glow of approaching ships. He worked quickly, fingers moving with desperate precision. Each keystroke was a confession, every spark a memory of failure turned into resolve. Outside, the wind carried the whine of engines. Inside, the console pulsed brighter. The message had begun its upload to every frequency still alive across the colonies. Images and files poured through, the recordings, Nexus documents, and the truth about Project Seraphim. Humanity's lie was unraveling. Gunfire erupted below. Era's roar answered it. She moved like a storm, flame tearing through the fog, defending the man who had once called her kind a curse. Elias watched her silhouette against the firelight and understood what his daughter had meant when she said hope would take many shapes. The tower shuddered under impact. A bullet tore through his side, driving him to one knee. He didn't stop typing. Pain meant nothing now. The data reached its final percent, the console chimed, and the hologram projected across the sky, his daughter's smiling face casting light over the ruins. Every city received it. Screens in human districts, crystal mirrors in dragon nests, all replayed the same message. The war had been engineered. The dragons had been victims, not monsters. Soldiers froze, unsure whether to keep fighting or fall silent. The truth burned brighter than the muzzle flashes. Era rushed to Elias's side, catching him as he fell back from the terminal. His blood streaked the floor, but his eyes were calm. "You did it," she whispered. "We both did." He smiled faintly. "You were right. Fire isn't just for destruction." His breath grew shallow. "It's for warmth, for light." Era held him close as the tower's signal spread far beyond the atmosphere, carrying his daughter's words into the stars. When the last heartbeat faded, she placed the chip beside him and whispered, "Rest, human. I'll build what you started." The morning sun broke through the clouds, touching both her scales and the fallen man's face. In that light, there was no line between human and dragon, only survivors of the same story. Across the colonies, people looked up to the hologram still glowing overhead and felt something they hadn't in years: understanding. The truth had cost everything, but it had rebuilt something stronger than fear. Era spread her wings and rose above the ruins, the air thick with the hum of rebuilding cities. The broadcast would never stop. The memory core would play on a loop, reminding all who watched that compassion, not conquest, was what kept civilization alive. And somewhere within the endless data stream, a little girl's laughter echoed, merging with the sound of dragon wings as they filled the sky again. ChatGPT can make